Simon Ekpa appeared in court on May 30, 2025, wearing the same grey suit and blue dotted tie he wore in a November 8, 2024 video, suggesting he reused the outfit intentionally, though with a different shirt. He had a stack of organized documents and color-coded folders on his desk, believed to include his handwritten speech, legal evidence, and business-related paperwork, possibly linked to his tax evasion charges in Finland. His handwritten speech, reportedly prepared hours before the session, was visibly on his desk, confirming earlier reports by the BBC about his plan to address the court directly. Color-coded folders in blue, yellow and orange were used to separate different categories of data or evidence, indicating meticulous preparation alongside his legal team. Simon Ekpa's grey hair was visible for the first time, implying he previously used black dye, which is not allowed in prison according to rules at the Kylmäkoski Correctional Center. He appeared tired or sober in the footage, likely due to reported eye problems, which may explain his subdued facial expressions during the session. Simon Ekpa's lawyer, Carl Kalumarius, appeared timid and unconvincing in his post-court interview, raising concerns about the strength of Simon Ekpa's legal defense. The Finnish government's lawyer, Samsa Hakala, appeared confident, assertive, and well-prepared in contrast, signaling a strong prosecutorial stance against Simon. Each courtroom participant had a personal monitor and microphone, showcasing the Finnish judicial system's organized and tech-enhanced courtroom setting. Both legal teams had assistants present, and the prosecution reportedly brought in a witness from Simon Ekpa's own family to testify against him, though more details were shared in a separate follow-up video. On the morning of May 30, 2025, something quite rare happened in the Finnish judicial system, and it captured the attention of people across continents. For the very first time, the government of Finland permitted the public release of courtroom video footage and images from the Pyhäjärvi District Court. This was not a routine trial. It was the court hearing of a man whose name is now familiar to millions around the world, especially in Nigeria and across the African diaspora, Simon Ekpa. The release of this footage stirred a powerful wave of reactions on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, TikTok, and YouTube. But beyond the trending headlines and viral posts, this moment marked the unveiling of a deeper story, one layered with unspoken emotions, subtle symbols, coded gestures, and meticulously arranged documents. When Simon Ekpa entered the courtroom on that day, his appearance was the first thing that struck many people who saw the footage. He wore a grey suit and a blue tie with white dots. For casual observers, it may have looked like just another courtroom outfit. But for those who followed his activities closely, it was clear that this was no ordinary choice of clothing. On November 8, 2024, just days before his arrest, Simon Ekpa had posted a video on Twitter where he appeared wearing the exact same suit and tie, though with a different shirt. In that video, he was dancing joyfully to music by the Nigerian artist Chinedu Okoli, also known as Flavor. That video, posted at about 3:40 p.m. as evident from the wall clock behind him, showed a very different Simon Ekpa, confident, expressive, and full of pride. Now, nearly 7 months later, he wore the same suit to a courtroom in Finland, and the mood could not have been more different. To those watching closely, the reuse of the outfit was not accidental. Simon Ekpa is known for his attention to detail and symbolic acts. Repeating the same outfit, especially one linked to a happier time before his arrest, could be interpreted as a subtle psychological tactic. It may have been his way of reclaiming confidence, revisiting a moment of control and triumph before everything changed. But there was also a sense of defiance in that choice, as though he was telling the court and the world that his identity, his message and his beliefs had not changed. On his desk in the courtroom sat a neatly arranged stack of documents. There were color-coded folders in blue, yellow and orange. Alongside these were loose sheets, including what was visibly a handwritten speech, which had already been rumored in a British Broadcasting Corporation report days earlier. According to that report by the British Broadcasting Corporation, Simon Ekpa had prepared a personal statement just hours before the court session began. The fact that the paper was clearly visible confirmed those earlier claims. This was not just any written note. It was something that Simon Ekpa, who is not only a political activist but also a former athlete, former soldier and trained lawyer, had carefully crafted in his own handwriting. There was a personal weight to that document. He was not relying only on his legal counsel to speak for him. He had decided to speak directly to the judges, to the prosecutors, and by extension, to the watching world. The color-coded folders hinted at an intense level of organization and preparation. Each color likely represented a different theme or set of evidence. The blue folder might have contained legal materials. The yellow could have been related to his political activities or human rights advocacy, and the orange perhaps included documents tied to the financial allegations brought against him by the Finnish government. At the heart of the case against Simon Ekpa were charges of aggravated tax fraud, among other alleged violations related to the operation of his business and fundraising platforms. It is believed that some of those documents came from his business activities, including files from his social media ventures and legal practice, and they were there to defend himself against those tax-related accusations. Another significant detail that went unnoticed by many until it was pointed out through close analysis was the presence of a pen in Simon Ekpa's hand and a glass jar on his desk. The pen in his left hand was not just a writing tool, it was a sign of alertness, a reminder that he was mentally engaged, taking notes, preparing to counter arguments, and recording key points. He was not passive. He was not simply waiting for the court to make decisions about his future. He was present, active, and possibly even directing parts of his defense strategy. The glass jar might have held his drinking water, but more importantly, it symbolized something else: his attempt to maintain routine, order, and a sense of dignity in an otherwise vulnerable position. Sitting beside Simon Ekpa was a man identified as Karl Kalumarias, a Finnish lawyer who had taken on the responsibility of representing him in this highly sensitive case. Karl Kalumarias, despite his credentials and experience, did not come across as particularly confident in the interviews that followed the court session. His tone, body language and expressions appeared timid, even unsure. This perception caused concern among supporters of Simon Ekpa, as it suggested a possible weakness in the legal defense. One would expect a top lawyer defending a controversial public figure facing serious allegations to be assertive, clear, and passionate in making his client's case. But that was not what many people saw in Karl Kalumarias. In stark contrast stood Samsa Hakala, the lawyer representing the government of Finland. Samsa Hakala appeared confident, precise, and fully prepared. He was not just familiar with the legal files, he seemed to believe in the strength of the case he was presenting. In his press remarks after the hearing, he gave the impression of someone determined to see justice done, someone convinced that the government had strong evidence against Simon Ekpa. The contrast between the two lawyers, one seemingly unsure, the other radiating confidence, added a deeper layer to the unfolding legal drama. Inside the courtroom itself, the setting was modern, structured, and quite advanced. Each participant, whether judge, prosecutor, defense lawyer, or assistant, had access to their own monitor and microphone. Each participant, whether judge, prosecutor, defense lawyer, or assistant, had access to their own monitor and microphone. This was not just a matter of convenience. It was a reflection of how seriously the Finnish justice system treats transparency, technological efficiency, and the rights of all participants to be fully engaged in the legal process. Every word spoken, every evidence presented, and every reaction recorded was documented in a way that made the session accessible for later analysis. Even more revealing was the composition of the legal teams. Both sides, the defense and the prosecution, had assistants. For Seaman Ekpa's lawyer, a woman was seated close by, likely to help with documentation, technical issues, or legal referencing. For the prosecution, a male assistant was present, probably playing a similar role. These details might seem minor, but they tell us that this trial was not a solo performance by either side. It was a coordinated effort involving multiple professionals working behind the scenes. Perhaps the most emotionally gripping part of the day's revelations came when it was confirmed that one of the prosecution's witnesses was a member of Seaman Ekpa's own family. Though the exact identity and relationship of this family member was not disclosed in the footage released that day, the idea that someone so close to him had agreed to testify against him raised serious questions about loyalty, pressure, or even family divisions that have remained hidden from public view. In traditional African contexts, family solidarity is sacred. So for a relative to publicly support the state's case against Seaman Ekpa could only mean that the evidence or the stakes involved were incredibly serious. Another detail that emerged from the courtroom videos was Seaman Ekpa's physical appearance. For the first time since his arrest, people saw his grey hair. This was surprising to many because earlier photos and videos of him showed jet black, well-groomed hair. What people may not have known is that before his arrest, Seaman Ekpa was already greying. He had been using hair dye, a common practice among public figures who want to maintain a youthful appearance. But inside the Kilamakoski Correctional Center, where he was being held, grooming products such as hair dye are strictly prohibited. This meant that as the days turned into weeks and months, his true appearance began to surface. The emergence of his grey hair was not just about aging, it was symbolic of change, of exposure, and perhaps of vulnerability. But even more notable than his grey hair was the look in his eyes. He appeared tired, subdued, and even slightly withdrawn. A closer examination revealed that Seaman Ekpa might be suffering from an eye condition. His gaze was often unfocused, and there were visible signs of strain. This could explain why he did not show the same level of facial expressiveness or verbal sharpness that he had displayed in the past. Health issues, especially those affecting one's sight, can deeply affect mood, energy, and communication. If Seaman Ekpa is indeed dealing with such a challenge, it adds another layer of difficulty to an already complex legal battle. All of these visual details, when put together, provide a more complete picture of the man who has come to symbolize a new chapter in the struggle for self-determination among certain groups in Nigeria, especially the supporters of the indigenous people of Biafra. Seaman Ekpa is no longer simply a name behind a microphone or a figure in a YouTube video. He is now a central character in an international legal drama involving questions of national security, tax evasion, freedom of speech, and family loyalty. But what was actually discussed inside that courtroom on May 30th, 2025? According to a video released later that day, which served as a follow-up breakdown of the legal proceedings, the prosecution presented a witness from Simon Ekpa's own family. This witness, according to unofficial reports, gave testimony that appeared to support the state's position against him. What was said exactly remains unclear, at least until full transcripts are made public. But the very presence of that relative was enough to shake the emotional and psychological foundation of Simon Ekpa's courtroom experience. It is easy to reduce a court case to legal charges and verdicts, but in reality, these proceedings are lived experiences filled with emotional tensions, hidden betrayals, and strategic decisions. Simon Ekpa's hearing was not just about whether he evaded taxes or whether his political activities crossed the line into illegality. It was about the fight for narrative control. It was about who gets to define what he stands for. And it was about how far a state is willing to go to enforce its laws, even against someone whose influence crosses borders and who commands a significant following online. As the trial continues and more details emerge, it is clear that what happened on May 30th, 2025 was not just a procedural formality. It was a key moment in a much larger story, one that involves legal systems, political ideologies, cultural identities, and deeply personal decisions. For Simon Ekpa, the grey suit and the blue dotted tie may have represented a link to a past moment of personal pride. But inside that courtroom, what mattered most was the present reality. His words, his documents, his health, and his defense team all came under scrutiny. The case of Simon Ekpa will likely be studied for years to come, not only by legal scholars and political analysts, but also by everyday people who see in him either a symbol of resistance or a cautionary tale. Whatever the final outcome may be, the details captured in the courtroom on that May morning in Finland have already left a powerful and lasting impression. And it is through those small, often overlooked elements, the handwritten speech, the jars, the folders, the grey hairs, and the distant eyes, that we begin to truly understand the complexity of Simon Ekpa's legal journey. Simon Ekpa, a Finnish-Nigerian political activist and former local councillor in Lahti, Finland, appeared before the Päijät-Häme District Court on May 30th, 2025, facing serious charges including public incitement to commit a crime with terrorist intent, participation in the activities of a terrorist group, aggravated tax fraud, and violation of the provisions of the Attorneys Act. The courtroom was a scene of meticulous preparation and high tension. Ekpa arrived wearing a grey suit and a blue dotted tie, an outfit he had previously worn in a video released on November 8, 2024. This choice of attire was seen by some as a deliberate statement, possibly symbolizing consistency in his political stance. On his desk, there were organized documents and color-coded folders believed to contain his handwritten speech, legal evidence, and business-related paperwork, possibly linked to his tax evasion charges in Finland. His handwritten speech, reportedly prepared hours before the session, was visibly on his desk, confirming earlier reports about his plan to address the court directly. Notably, Ekpa's grey hair was visible for the first time, suggesting he had previously used black dye, which is not permitted in prison according to rules at the Kylmäkoski Correctional Center. He appeared tired or sober in the footage, likely due to reported eye problems, which may explain his subdued facial expressions during the session. Ekpa's lawyer, Carl Kalumerius, appeared timid and unconvincing in his post-court interview, raising concerns about the strength of Ekpa's legal defense. In contrast, the Finnish government's lawyer, Samsa Hakala, appeared confident, assertive, and well-prepared, signaling a strong prosecutorial stance against Ekpa. The Finnish judicial system's organized and tech-enhanced courtroom setting was evident, with each participant having a personal monitor and microphone. Both legal teams had assistants present, and the prosecution reportedly brought in a witness from Ekpa's own family to testify against him, though more details were shared in a separate follow-up video. The charges against Ekpa are grave. The Finnish authorities have accused him of using social media platforms to incite violence and promote separatist propaganda, particularly in Nigeria's southeast region. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.